Hey y'all, and welcome back to another Wedding Wednesday. My name is Jane Corley with Pic Visions, Media Arts and Photography. If it's your first time here, welcome! Make sure to like this video if you learned something new, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you can be notified every time a new video is uploaded every week. Every Wednesday we talk about wedding tips, tricks, and techniques in order to successfully plan your wedding. In today's episode, we're talking about transportation and parking. Transportation and parking can be a nightmare if not planned correctly or not even prepared for correctly. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of transportation and parking. First, is your ceremony and your reception, are they at the same place? Do you have to coordinate different parking situations for one location versus another? If they're at the same place, this is going to be a lot easier process to coordinate, but if they are at different locations, we'll cover that in just a few minutes. Let's go over parking first. Parking is crucial. You need to have some place for your guests to put their vehicles while they are going to their event. Duh, right? But it's easier said than done. You need to ask the venue location where you're getting married, the ceremony location, as well as the reception location, how many parking spots they have available. Also inquire, is there overflow parking if you need it? A way to find how many guests that you need to find parking places for is to take your wedding guest list, divide it by 2. That's how many spaces you'll need. If you have a lot of families coming in, you can divide that number by 3 to get a more accurate number. Will you need parking attendants or valets? Parking attendants you can absolutely hire if the venue does not provide them for you. Valets, same story. But if you don't want to incur that additional cost, you can always just ask a cousin, or you can ask your brother, somebody who's not in the wedding party, somebody who is just an extra personnel that doesn't mind helping out, be your parking attendants or even be your valets. Next, let's talk about parking signage. Your venue is probably going to have something to say about this. Most venues don't like you making holes in the ground. They don't like you disturbing any of their landscaping. So you can use easels, you can use little real estate signs that barely make a hole in the landscaping. Ask the venue location what their regulations are for signage and try to follow those rules. I've seen a lot of brides that use pallets. They'll paint them and write whatever they need to write on the different boards of the pallets. If you're doing that sort of rustic-y, vintage themed wedding, you can also use easels if it's more of a classic look, and you can use hanging signs on parking signs or just on posts or poles or shepherd's hooks located at the venue location if you need to do signage. These signs should clearly depict exactly what you're wanting your guests to know about parking. So ceremony this way, reception this way, parking this way, whatever you need to put on there, make sure that it's clear, make sure that it's bold, and make sure that it's easy to read. So what if your locations are different? If your locations are different, not only do you need to explain that to your guests on your invitations, but you also need to explain it on your wedding website, and I would also encourage you to put the address of the second location on your wedding programs. If you aren't doing shuttle services from one location to another, coordinate with a reliable member of the wedding party or somebody who is a reliable chauffeur for out-of-town guests that may not have their own vehicles available, as well as older guests that might have trouble getting around. So let's talk about transportation. I'm going to start with the big party before the ceremony, before anything happens, which is your bachelorette party. The bachelorette party transportation is easy to coordinate, a lot easier to coordinate than guests for a wedding. That is because you have a much smaller number. If you're going to go the route of renting a party bus or just renting somebody to be on call at all times, waiting on you to finish where you're at to move you to a different location, awesome. Do your research though, compare prices, and know what you're getting into, and make sure to check your contracts. But these days with rideshare apps, it's really easy to get a more affordable option where you're not paying somebody to wait around in a parking space until you're ready to leave. We'll have a whole nother video on bachelorette party coordination coming up, but while we're talking about transportation, just keep in mind that if you're planning your bachelorette party and you're worried about transportation coordination, maybe find a location like walking around downtown and hitting a bunch of bars, or going to different places that are within walking distance and then only having one location that may be off-site that needs to be transferred to. So let's talk about wedding day transportation. When to plan the transportation for your wedding, when to coordinate, and when to schedule with the people you need to schedule it with. You need to have the information from your venue, the time, the date, all of the information for what time frame your event is going to be taking place. So you need to have the date, you need to have the time, you need to have the location. Your transportation cost is going to be between 5 and 8% of your budget, with the average transportation cost in total of between $800 and $900. It can be cheaper and it can be a little bit more expensive. That's just the average of how much to expect to spend on transportation. Before meeting with transportation services, you need to do a little bit of research and you need to get all your ducks in a row. Your detailed outline and the contract should be included with this information. The date, the time, the location, hours for rental, amenities included in the rental, overtime fees and gratuity, mileage rate, deposit information, as well as cancellation and refund policies. You also need to find a day of contact person. This can be a family member who has nothing else to do other than wait by their phone to make sure no fires happen on your transportation. It can also be your wedding coordinator if your wedding coordinator is available to help with that, but I would actually encourage you to have a day of contact person, somebody other than your coordinator, because if something happens with your transportation and your guests can't get where they need to go, you're going to need somebody who can handle that, who can maybe leave the venue location and handle that situation so that everything else runs smoothly. Be aware of the high seasons for transportation vendors. This includes April, May, and June. Why, you ask? Because homecoming, prom, and graduation. A lot of people rent limos, they rent party buses, they rent anything they possibly can rent from transportation vendors during this season. So be aware that if you're getting married during those months, you may have to book sooner rather than later, and your cost may be a little bit higher. So let's start small. You, your groom or your bride, your wedding party, and any VIP guests, those people will need transportation guaranteed. So get a solid count for the VIP personnel that will guarantee need coordination for transportation. To be clear, this includes the bride, the groom, everybody in the wedding party, as well as the photographer, because you may want your photographer or one of your photographers, if you have more than one, to be a part of the party bus or the trolley bus or whatever you're transporting yourself to and from the ceremony location to the reception. And other VIP guests may include, grandparents or your parents or anybody that you need to have as a VIP personnel. If your ceremony location and your reception location are at the same location and you have plenty of parking available, there's a lot of things in this video you're not really going to have to worry about, because your guests can travel from the ceremony location to the reception location without having to get into their vehicles, and from the reception location back to their lodging in their same vehicles without having to worry about anything. But if you have a lot of guests that are coming from out of town or don't have a reliable form of transportation to your ceremony and reception area, you may need to think about shuttle services from their hotel or lodging locations. And the way to do that is have them meet at a central location like a park or a fountain, or for your shuttle service to pick them up. You don't have to book transportation for your guests, but if you choose not to book a shuttle service or a limo service or a town car, whatever kind of transportation service for your guests, be clear about it on your invitations and be clear about it on your website. You don't want your guests expecting to have transportation provided to them and have no way of getting to your event, or having to scramble and coordinate with family members who are probably pretty busy on the day to get a ride or to get to where they need to be for your event. Do your research about where you are going, where you need to be coming from, and where you want to end up at the end of the night. This information will give you a clear idea about, okay, well, I can book this shuttle service from these people, and then they can pick people up, drop people off, and I need to coordinate how many people can ride in each transportation. To determine where a shuttle service should start from, if you have a bunch of different lodging locations, think about including on your RSVP cards that you send out to your guests with your invitations, Include on there where are you staying, or circle the area of town you are staying in, and then you'll be able to coordinate your guests to a centrally located area that they can maybe Uber or Lyft to, and then get shuttled to your location from that one centrally located area. What are your options for transportation? A stretch limo usually holds about 10 people. A regular limo holds about 6. A town car holds about 4, and that's including the driver. Shuttle vans hold between 15 and 30, and then a full-size coach bus holds 50. Now, what are the rides that you need to consider? Who needs to go where? Who needs to be where and what and when and how is this all going to work? Your bride needs transportation from original location, so where she slept that night, to the ceremony location. It can be with a bridesmaid, a group of bridesmaids, it can be with just her parents, somebody from the family, just as long as she has a guaranteed ride from where she slept that night to the ceremony location. The groom, same story. Both of these people need to show up early. Get to the location at least an hour beforehand, because you want to be there before your guests start to arrive, so that you can finish getting ready, get your hair and makeup, get everything done the way it needs to do it, have your photographer take a few pictures of you guys getting ready, have a few pictures of everybody all together, your bridesmaids, your groomsmen, like we learned in our photography video, and have time to decompress and really just get ready to do the thing. The wedding party. The wedding party also needs to show up early, typically around the same time that the bride and groom need to. That way they can be there for pictures, they can be there for support for the bride, for the groom. They can be there when they need to be there, and they can help out with any last minute details at the ceremony location as well as the reception location if they are at the same location. The guests. The guests are going to start showing up anywhere from 45 minutes to 15 minutes before the ceremony starts. Plan your transportation services for your guests. If you're renting a shuttle or limos or town cars or trolleys or whatever you're renting for your transportation for your guests, they need to come in waves of about 15 minutes. That way your guests are not waiting too long for transportation. They're not waiting for, I need a ride. Everything should be scheduled. It should be like a bus fare. Everybody should be able to expect when their ride's coming, when they're going to be able to leave, when they're going to be able to arrive reliably. Now, rides to the reception. If they're in different places, of course. This is what we're talking about. If your ceremony location is one spot and your reception location is in another, that's what we're talking about. Your bride and groom, they can go together. That's one vehicle. Your wedding party can also be in that same vehicle. So if you're wanting to have the shuttle service take them, whatever you're wanting to do, you can include your wedding party and your bride and groom, even the parents of the bride or the grandparents of the bride, just the VIP personnel from the ceremony location to the reception location can all be in one vehicle if you opt to do that. They can also be in separate vehicles, but they can also be in same vehicle. Your wedding party, if they're not going to be in the same vehicle as the bride and groom, you'll need to coordinate something to get them transferred over to the reception location. Then your guests. If your guests, you have a bunch of older people coming, or people who can't drive themselves, or people who can't be trusted to drive themselves from a wedding reception back to their hotels, you'll need to coordinate transportation for them. So you can have a shuttle service from your ceremony location to your reception location, as well as a centrally located from your lodging locations to your ceremony locations. Then from the reception locations, you need to have a ride for your guests. If you got them to that location, you need to return them to their original location. So get a shuttle or continue paying that same shuttle service for that service back to their lodging locations. So let's talk about the Getaway Mobile, as I like to call it. What are the bride and the groom driving from the reception to their night of room or to their honeymoon location? As I said earlier, most minimum rental fees are going to be about 3 hours. So if you're going to be renting a car, just keep that in mind. You're going to have that car either for the entire night, or you're going to have that shuttle service drop you off and you're going to pay that minimum fee. What we did for our wedding is I drive a Jeep. So what our wedding party did was we just took the top off, we took the doors off, and I knew I wouldn't be drinking too much during our wedding reception. I wanted to be clear eyes, full heart sort of thing. And I knew that I would be totally fine driving back. I love driving my Jeep, so it was just a pure pleasure to be able to do that. And driving down the road with my wedding dress billowing out the back and my groom sloppily sitting in the passenger seat was a dream come true. It was wonderful, and our wedding party decked out my automobile, and it was wonderful. But if you're renting a car, there's no shame in that. If you're renting a limo, if you're renting a town car, if you're renting a classic car, you're borrowing your uncle's car, whatever the situation is, just have it coordinated and have it planned. So it is important to shop around for your transportation. You need to ask fellow brides and grooms, people who have traveled, people who have used transportation services in the areas where you're getting married. Ask them for reviews, look up reviews online, do your research before you book. Have at least 2 or 3 options of people to book with before you go out and start chatting with vendors. Small tips: don't worry about the amenities. You don't need a full bar in your limousine for a 15-minute ride from your ceremony to your reception. You don't need a sunroof. You don't need a bright white pearl limousine, because that's going to cost more than a black or a gray limousine. Think about the different amenities and try to live with what you can live without, because that price can get very, very high if your budget is something you're worrying about. Ask for discounted rates on shuttle services. If you're renting a shuttle for an entire day, if you ask for a discounted rate for a group, they will give it to you, but you have to ask. Be clear with your guests on your wedding website as well as your invitations about what to expect with transportation. So whether you're deciding to book a shuttle service or limousines or a party bus or a trolley service, whatever your transportation needs are, book them early. As soon as you have all of your information about your venue, your time, your date, and your location, start shopping around for your transportation, especially if you're getting married in the popular months of May, April, and June, as we said earlier. So I do hope that this video was helpful on how to plan, prepare, and coordinate parking and lodging for your wedding day. Make sure to leave in the comments below any tips and tricks you have for your fellow brides and grooms on parking and transportation. I look forward to seeing you guys next week when we talk about wedding day timeline and how to plan and prepare the timeline for your wedding day. Make sure to like this video if you learned something new, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell if you have not done so already. See you later, guys.